So a disclaimer before we start. Once again, we'll be talking about Santa Claus. We'll be talking about Santa Claus's workshop and how the toys are made and all the secrets of Santa Claus. So if we have any little ears that do not want to hear all Santa secrets, put your earmuffs on. Feel free to exit during this portion. And we're going to talk about Santa Claus today. We welcome Rev Pam McMillan. We're talking about a Unitarian Universalist understanding of Santa Claus. Thank you for coming.
Good morning. If I prepared better, I would have had a Santa hat on today, but alas, I'm going to have to get my own one. I don't know about you, but I have very distinct memories, the sensations, the feelings, the excitement about going to bed on Christmas Eve. Every year I would go to bed in brand new pajamas because it was the only present I was allowed to open. And I desperately tried to sleep. And I was convinced every subtle sound I could hear in the background was none other than Santa Claus. Of course, growing up in Florida, I was told that since we did not have a chimney, Santa would come in through the front door because obviously we would leave a key under the mat for him. I had so much faith and so much hope. And then on Christmas morning, my brother, my sister, and I would have to anxiously wait in the hallway until our grandparents arrived so that we could capture the film of the surprise on our faces when we saw the hope brought to life to see just what Santa had brought us. See, for children, the story of Santa Claus brings this wide-eyed sense of wonder and joyful anticipation of the Christmas season. And as adults, too, it's really exciting. We were talking before the service, and there's just a general excitement even in discussing the topic of Santa. I found myself asking some children of my friends, "Are you ready for Santa?" And I was so delighted to see the giant smiles on their faces. Of course, behind this beloved figure hides a long history of thought-provoking significance for people of all ages, especially, I would argue, Unitarians. You see, tracing the path of Santa reveals how this character evolved over centuries of storytelling and has become a symbol of compassion, charity, and care for all of humanity. The modern understanding of Santa Claus can teach us about questioning faith and traditions that we were raised in. Truly examining the person and the myth of Santa allows us to reclaim this mythological figure, this Christmas icon, and not have any disdain for him, but rather to rekindle a sense of spirit, of social justice, and of childlike wonder within each of us. So let's talk for a minute about the origins of Santa Claus. As I mentioned previously, there was, in fact, sort of a Santa Claus. While the red-suited, rosy-cheeked Santa is so ubiquitous today, he emerges from humble origins dating back centuries. He was inspired by the 4th century Greek bishop Saint Nicholas, who showed secret generosity to the poor and marginalized. Tales would arise of this compassionate hero miraculously giving gifts and protection. St. Nicholas was believed to be born around 280 AD near Myra, or modern-day Turkey. And legends say that he was so generous of spirit that he gave away all of his inherited wealth just to care for the poor and the sick. One of the many legends, if you've ever heard, you might have, is that he saved 3 young girls from being sold into human trafficking. On the eve before their father thought he would have to sell his daughters to save himself from poverty, St. Nicholas threw a bag of coins into their windows for a dowry. And some say the bag of coins landed in their stockings, which were hung up to dry. Of course, that's where we get the tradition today. Another legend, which I find hysterical, is that he resurrected 3 young boys who had been murdered and pickled by a local butcher, which has now been added to the list of many ways I would not like to die. Perhaps my favorite legend of St. Nicholas, and I find this very amusing. So St. Nicholas would have attended the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, which is where you may have heard of, if you've heard of the Nicene Creed in Christianity, that's where the council gathered, discussed what would go in it, and that was where that was penned. One of the stories is that supposedly St. Nicholas slapped another man by the name of Arius in the face for being a heretic, which makes me wonder what St. Nicholas would think if he met a Unitarian. Of course, over the many years, the legend of St. Nicholas grew and became the patron saint and protector of all children. In the Middle Ages, families would celebrate the feast day of St. Nicholas, which is December 6th, by leaving gifts for the children inside of their stockings. By the Renaissance, St. Nicholas was the most popular saint in Europe. Legends of St. Nick gradually blended with European lore, like the mischievous German spirit Sinterklaas and England's Father of Christmas. And this I really love. During the Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther was not a fan of saints or really anything Catholic, right? So he tried to squash any celebration of sainthood, and he even encouraged people not to say that Santa gave gifts, but that it was actually Christkind, or that the baby Jesus was the one who delivered gifts. But even that couldn't stop and suppress this myth from growing and becoming so popular. Immigration into the 19th century, American fused these stories into the kind reindeer helming bringer of gifts that we know today. The first time we really see it in American lore is in 1809. Washington Irving helped popularize Sinterklaas myth in New York, calling him, and I love this, the patron saint of New York. Santa gained even wider fame during Clement Clarke's more 1823 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, which birthed much of our modern imagery, his rosy cheeks, his button nose, his belly like a bowl full of jelly. Today in the US, we leave milk and cookies, we watch the Santa tracker on the news, and we wait for his arrival of the 8 tiny reindeer. Much of our theology today surrounding Santa Claus comes from the song, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which was a song written in 1934. He's making a list, he's checking it twice, he's find out if who's naughty or nice, which, side note, I have to do this because of the fact that I spoke about Taylor Swift last time. There's a line in one of her songs, I have a list and yours is on my list and underlined. I check it once and I check it twice. So it's also a Taylor Swift reference. So just want to throw that out there. She and Santa, they're on the same page. As the figure has evolved across eras and societies, common threads have endured, and embodying generosity and care has ultimately been the core of who this character is. One of the things that I admire so much about Unitarians is the understanding that wisdom rarely comes from a single source. And Santa is a perfect example of how these stories evolve and gather meaning across cultures. What began as the tale of St. Nicholas, a compassionate 4th century bishop, has transformed through generations, absorbing myth and traditions worldwide. Much like our own spiritual journey, Santa's legend demonstrates how rich understanding emerges when we remain open to different narratives. We don't just tolerate diverse stories, we celebrate them. When we listen with genuine curiosity to the traditions of others, whether it's the origin of a beloved holiday figure or the sacred practice of a different faith, we expand our capacity for empathy and imagination, and that only serves to strengthen each of us. Now, as we have mentioned, we need to talk a little bit about Santa Claus and the truth that we all know, right? That's a big part of why I'm here today. It's funny because we almost started launching to a conversation, how old were you? Because it almost feels like for many of us, we have very specific memories tied to us learning about the truth of Santa. I have such a clear memory of this. I remember the moment vividly. I heard a rumor about the truth of Santa Claus on the playground. So I ran to my father and I asked him, and he said to me, as long as you believe him in your heart, then he is real. So for me, that was it. That settled it. Santa was real, and everyone else could jump in a lake. Of course, the boy across the street then came back and told me, and I felt betrayed. I felt like my parents had lied to me, and they could never be trusted. For a long time, I actually struggled with the symbol of Santa Claus because I thought that Santa equated dishonesty. I really struggled with this character. How could I trust my parents? Could I trust what I believe? It was truly my first crisis of faith. This isn't just a simple story of disillusionment. It's about the human experience of confronting the tension of magical thinking and rational understanding, and when we first confront it as children. Before any of us ever really questioned the deeper spiritual concepts, the existence of God and divinity and salvation, we first had to navigate the complex landscape of Santa and Santa's existence. Think about it. How many of us first learned to critically examine belief systems through this childhood moment? We started asking impossible questions. We talked about this before the service. How could one man visit every single house across the world in one night? Why do all of the mall Santas look so different? And how do they report back to Santa when we've been naughty? For many of us, this is, in fact, the moment that painful confrontation about mythology encourages the gift of questioning, wrestling with the belief systems that were handed down to us by our families of origin. In many ways, and I truly believe this, Santa is the patron saint of deconstruction. The beauty of this experience lies not in the deconstruction of belief, but in its transformation. Richard Rohr, who is a spiritualist and a theologian that I deeply love, he says that part of the spiritual journey is about moving from order to disorder to reorder. When we first learn about Santa, it is the order. When we learn the truth, it is our disorder, where we feel like we aren't sure what's real. But then we eventually must move to reorder, a pattern that we must do as adults for our entire faith journey. We begin with the certainty of childhood, those magical, unquestioned stories handed down to us. Then comes disorder, when we start to see the cracks in the narrative. But here's the profound part. We don't lose the magic. We find ways to reorder the story, to find something even more powerful, and the ability to find meaning beyond literal truth. In this sacred space of questioning, Unitarians find their truest self. Santa becomes more than a myth. He is a metaphor for spiritual courage, for the radical act of challenging what we've been told and discovering our own path. Our faith doesn't ask us to accept, but to explore. To doubt is not to destroy, but to breathe life into belief. In letting go of child certainties, we make room for deeper, more nuanced understanding of wonder, of mystery, and of connection. I no longer see Santa Claus as a symbol of dishonesty. I see him as a symbol of compassion and empathy and care and justice and anonymous generosity in ways that inspire millions all over the world. That is what took place in my own spiritual journey. Now let's be clear. Santa Claus is a unpopular character in some circles. When I first pitched this sermon, I was kind of met with resistance because not everybody likes Santa Claus, right? He's not just a symbol of generosity anymore. In our modern world, he has become entangled with consumerism. A mythical figure now often associated more with corporate profits than compassion. I'm sorry, I don't know if you could hear it online, that was a fantastic groan from the audience. That was amazing. Like, I'll pay you later for that. That was fantastic. In fact, again, one of the most popular images we know of Santa Claus today comes from advertisements from Coca-Cola. Yet beneath the layers of marketing and manufactured desire, the core of Santa's story still whispers something profound about the human potential for kindness. There is a historian that I really enjoy that you might want to look up. His name is Jerry Bowler. His daughter, Kate Bowler, has become a very popular modern speaker. But Jerry Bowler himself has studied Santa Claus and all things Christmas. That's his whole specialty. And he wrote a book called Santa Claus, a Biography. And it's very good. I highly recommend it. And in it, he talks about how Santa Claus, the myth was never just about gifts. It's a powerful metaphor for fantasy, anticipation, and selflessness. We cannot ignore how this symbol has been co-opted by a system that prioritizes purchasing over genuine care. The irony is stark. A legend of anonymous giving has become the centerpiece of capitalism consumption. The story of St. Nicholas, however, transcends that. It's not just a seasonal tale, but a timeless call to radical compassion. His anonymous gifts reveal a deeper truth. Generosity is not about momentary charity, but a continuous commitment to human dignity. When we see today's systems of inequality, the persistent poverty, the marginalized communities, we need to be reminded that the Christmas spirit is not confined to 1 month, but a year-round mandate for justice. Unitarian Universalists have always understood this. You don't commemorate legends, but you live them. St. Nicholas challenges us to look beyond surface-level giving, to actively dismantle the very structures that create human suffering. Remember, who he was as a saint was to fight against human trafficking and poverty. His legacy is not about magical gift giving, but it's about recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every single person. Last year, so many of you know this, but I work for hospice. I work for Hospice of Health First, and we have a really robust children's bereavement program. It's actually really remarkable. Any child ages 5 to 18 who has experienced any sort of grief or loss is eligible to participate completely free in this program called Bright Star. It's absolutely amazing. And I wasn't able to attend last year, but this year I attended the Christmas party, where we had, I want to say, over 75 children come to receive presents and to meet Santa and to eat pastries and to do crafts. It was absolutely remarkable. And one of the chaplains actually played Santa. And he did such a good job. One of the things that he did was when parents would check in with their kids, he would ask for them to write something on a page, like not just their name, but something that they were proud of about the child. So this is Susie, and she just got an A on her spelling test. So that way, when Santa met the child, he could say, "You did such a good job on your spelling test," right? Right? So lovely. I'm going to try not to get choked up. One little girl came to him privately and said, after his mom had walked away, is, "Santa, the one thing I really want is for you to bring my dad back." I know. And what I loved is that in that moment, that chaplain, his name was Woody, he didn't try to give her easy answers. He didn't try to say, "Of course I'll give you your dad back," because he knows that that's not something he can ever promise. But he just said, "I'm so sorry. That's so hard." And he gave her the biggest hug and just let her know that she was loved. And that kind of tender story to me is like, that's the heart of Santa Claus, guys. Our task is not to abandon the myth, but to reclaim its revolutionary heart. Santa can be a call to action, a reminder that generosity is a year-round commitment, not just a holiday decoration to be packed away. We must transform this legend from a tool of commercialism back to the beacon of radical love that it is. The Santa Claus story is a profound journey into human understanding, a metaphor for how we grow and question and transform as individuals. The Unitarian Universalist approach doesn't seek to cement belief, but to explore it. We find meaning in wrestling with deeper truths, understanding how myths evolve, and finding the wisdom in the myth that goes beyond literal truth. Legends like Santa teach us that stories are not fixed, but living narratives that challenge us to look beyond the surface. They inspire us to seek empathy, justice, and human dignity. Our task is not to discard these stories, but to continually reinterpret, to turn them over in our hands like a gem catching new light. And in so doing, we find new threads of compassion that bind our human experience. And so this holiday season, may the spirit of St. Nicholas, of Santa Claus, guide each of us to create a world where no one is forgotten, where compassion triumphs over consumerism, and where the true magic of giving knows no season. Whew, I got emotional. Thank you so much.